is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome into the Film Guy Network on a beautiful Thursday evening. Hey, we got a saying around here: last shows, best shows. Last shows of the week, best shows of the week, right here, dialing it up 2 hours in a row. We're going to bring the juice right here on the platform. Hope that you guys do as well, both in the chats, in the comments, and of course, in your support, making sure you're hitting that thumbs up button, like and subscribing, rating, reviewing, all that good stuff. But of course, it is a Thursday, which not only means last show, best show, not only means bringing the juice on into the weekend, but it also means I got a recipe for you. I've been cooking it up all week via film study, okay, getting that extra analysis in, grinding it late, grinding that tape, all right, and finding out a way to find a recipe for success and a key to the victory for Saturday for your Georgia Bulldogs here in the chat. So welcome in. Glad to have you here. We're going to start on the offensive side of the football. And for the second week in a row, Georgia faces a blitz football team. This is a zone blitz football team. However, last week it was a man blitz football team from Missouri. You've seen two of those this year. You saw a man pressure team versus South Carolina. You saw a man pressure team against Missouri. You are now seeing a zone pressure team from Ole Miss, very similar to what you saw from Auburn several weeks ago, though I don't think they necessarily have the playmakers at the safety position that Auburn did. Nonetheless, last week was about getting a hat on a hat, right? Identifying the 5 or 6 guys that are ultimately going to be coming and pressuring us and who's playing man coverage behind that. It's very similar to that this week, except it's far more about identifying what's going on and letting the football rip, right? Zone blitzes are often better disguised than man blitzes. Do we have Epic Pen ready up over there? Get Epic Pen ready. I think we might be going to a concept of the day. I feel one just itching up on me. But anyways, zone blitzes are very, very, not necessarily easy to disguise, but they're much easier to disguise as opposed to man blitzes. Are we ready? Okay, but anyways, when you have a man blitz, right, you kind of have to get over who you're ultimately going to cover. In a zone blitz, you might be able to disguise it a little bit better. Here's what I mean. Okay. Let's take it to the board. Ha, 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 woo. Here we go. All right, so, woo, get out of here.
You got over there quick, man.
I did. My bad, bro. It's Thursday. I told you I was going to bring the juice. All right, here we go. If I have a tight end over here, let's say I have a Z receiver, all right, and I have a nickel defender. Let's call him a star defender over here, right? And I have a corner over here. We're playing man coverage. Well, if I'm going to blitz this guy, right, and play man coverage over the top of him, I now have to roll my safety over the top of that guy so he has proper leverage, so he's not running over there post-snap and trying to get over the top of him. So when we see this stacked alignment as an offense, hey, we kind of know that guy's probably coming. They're adding that guy into the equation. Now, if they're playing some type of zone defense, right? Let's draw the same look. I don't know why I put an E. We're trying to mark a Z over here. Let's play a zone defense, right? Let's just draw it up with like, hey, maybe a safety splitting the difference and kind of a linebacker right here splitting the difference over number 2. Well, now we don't necessarily know who might be cracking and replacing on these zone blitzes, right? So it's a lot more dependent, guys, on the quarterback this week than it necessarily is the offensive line. Again, last week is about getting hats on hats, making sure we identify which guys are coming and which guys are going to ultimately be covering, right? This week, they might be able to hide it a little bit more. So what I'm trying to tell you is last week, far more of an emphasis on your offensive line, identifying, executing. This week, far more about your quarterback, identifying, hey, this is where the pressure's coming from. Now we have a void on this side of the defense because of that, right? Identifying and getting the ball out of his hands pretty quickly. I don't necessarily worry about whether or not Georgia's going to find the right 5 guys that are coming. This offensive line is very, 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 experienced, right? And that helps out a lot in these types of football games. Again, not going to be able to necessarily identify it as well as you have in the last couple of weeks. I think you have to pick on number 4 from Ole Miss, Perkins. I think he's going to be a really, really good football player, borderline great by the time he gets done playing. But he's playing as a freshman right now, and it's very obvious that he is a freshman. Even 8 weeks, 9 weeks, 10 weeks into the season, teams are putting him in vulnerable situations and making him make decisions, at game speed. And you can tell he's still a freshman. So I would imagine Mike Bobo does something, whether it be with motions in the run game or whether it be some type of trickeration or whether it be maybe some slipped action from the tight end. There is going to be something that occupies and takes advantage of some young eyes there at the linebacker position on Saturday. I think it's a major key to being explosive on the offensive side of the football. I think you have to remain explosive and just absolutely destroying zone defenses. I think it's the beauty of this offense, to be honest with you. Like, as much as people talk about how Georgia doesn't necessarily have the dynamic weapons that other perennial powerhouses do, like, say, an Ohio State, or maybe they don't have the flashy weapons that, say, maybe like a USC does, or even like a Washington does. Well, no, they don't, but their system lives off of destroying zone coverage. And despite the fact that they may not have these types of weapons, I haven't seen very many football teams think that they can line up for 4 quarters and play man coverage. And even the teams that do kind of ultimately end up giving up explosives like we saw with South Carolina and Missouri. So I'm intrigued to see if y'all continue to still destroy teams that seemingly want to continue to line up in zone coverage. I'm going to tell you right now, I would do what South Carolina and Missouri did. I would live and die by the fact that I'm just going to try to cover them and get after them today because, again, South Carolina has like bottom 6 in the conference, bottom 5 in the conference, weapons and athletes on that defensive side of the football, and they held you to, what, 27 points in that football game, 29 points in that football game, whatever, sub 30. Okay, and they lived and died by it and clogged some things up, as did Missouri. But that's not who this football team's been on tape. I'd be intrigued to see if they came out and just kind of reverted to something that they weren't, right? This is a quarters football team that rolls into thirds versus 3x1. So if you give them 2x2, they're going to try to play a quarter shell to it. If you give them 3x1, they're going to play cover 3 to it. So they're going to be in zone coverage. Does Bobo and this offense continue to destroy those types of defenses? My mindset tells me yes. My mindset tells me you're going to have some explosives on Saturday. You'll see that idea and that concept and that thought process show up in my bold predictions as well, not to spoil too much of that. Let's flip over to the defensive side of the football. I'm rolling here, aren't I, boys? Let's flip over to the defensive side of the football. Hey, if Ole Miss gashes we're not flipping. We're balancing. This says balance the defense, not defense. We're going to balance the defense, all right? If Ole Miss gashes or gasses you, meaning if they hit you with a quick explosive, you got to respond as an offense accordingly, right? You might have to score quickly. You might have to answer an immediate momentum type of swing if they gash you. Well, what if they gas you? What if they take like 8 or 9 plays and 10 plays and really get down the field like we've seen Ole Miss be able to do with their run game? Well, at that point, you got to balance that as an offense as well. Maybe time for you to start taking the air out of the ball as well to give your defense an opportunity to, respond, get things sorted out on that sideline and gas themselves back up before going back out on the field. You can't have Ole Miss score quickly, you give the ball back quickly with no answer, just as well as you can't have Ole Miss score or Ole Miss drive 12 plays, turn it over on downs, and then you go 3 and out. That's a very, very quick way for you to gas out your defense. You have to play complementary football, and we'll talk about this a little bit in another one of our topics tonight. But that's kind of who you've been designed to be. You've been designed to be a complementary football program under Kirby Smart. So I don't necessarily worry about that one when it comes to, hey, the offense needs to pick up here in this type of facet for the defense. That's who your identity as a program is. Another one, Daijun Edwards out of the backfield this week, I think is a major key, right? I've been telling you, they're a zone football team, whether it be quarters, whether it be cover 3, whatever they're running. 9 times out of 10, when you get a real zone football team that's bailing out on 3rd down or bailing out on obvious passing downs or really, really trying to get back and keep everything up underneath them, well, that kind of tends for running backs in the flat to be nice and open, right? Check downs to be nice and open, all right, on early downs. That means Daijun Edwards out in the flat against grass, all right? So people are going to be pursuing him. And I'm going to tell you right now, for a football team in the SEC that doesn't tackle well, that's a nightmare situation, Daijun Edwards out in space. So I think the ability to maybe check the ball down against, again, a team that's going to be playing a lot of zone, maybe force them to tackle when dumping it out on early downs, I think that might be a recipe for success. Now, let's get a little greedy. Let's talk about what's extra in the game plan. What would be ideal? Okay, again, I'm being greedy. I'm saying, hey, play a 100% perfect football game. This is how you do it. 3 or 4. Be 75% on your explosive shots. Georgia taking about 1, maybe 2, 1.5 deep shots per quarter this season. You got to be 75% on Saturday. Show me that you can do this. I want to know, not for tomorrow or not for Saturday. I want to know for January, can you hit 75% of those deep shots? I want to rush explosive. Now, I know Kendall Milton and Daijun Edwards aren't these types of backs, but I want one. Again, I'm being greedy. I want a 40-yard ripper on Saturday. I want to see somebody bust out, get out in the open field, and stick their foot in the gas and get after it for a little bit. We haven't seen that since Vanderbilt. I want to see that this weekend. Again, I know I'm being greedy. And I want Oscar Delp and Carson Beck to hit up on an explosive on Saturday. And again, I think it's going to happen. I'm going to tell you that in my bold predictions. Let's flip over finally to the defensive side of football. Boy, we cooking on this recipe. Make sure you hit that like, subscribe, rate, review, all that good stuff. Defense. Hey, it's almost a triple option. Slick. Like as close to a triple option as we can possibly get in the run game in 2023 outside of Air Force, who's actually still running it for some reason. 17-point deficit you're never going to come back from, just letting you know. But this Ole Miss offense, a lot of run threats, right? A lot of looks that you have to stop. That's what I mean by it's almost a triple option. You have to be prepared at all times to stop a variety of things all at once. I'm not smart enough to figure it out. I would never claim to be. I would if I ever got into college coaching, it would be immediately on the offensive side of the football. And as we tried to climb the ranks, we would flip over to the defensive side of the football just to learn and challenge ourselves. But we would remain an offensive mind because of stuff like this. I don't know how you fit this. I don't know how you get everybody in the right gap. I don't know how you account for everything, all right, and get it all fitted up. But I've never not worried or never worried about Glenn Schumann's ability to figure that shit out because, well, he's the best, right? He's the best in the sport. And every single time, again, one of these trickeration run-based offenses comes and faces Georgia, particularly at home, they kind of get stymied. Like, you have to be able to line up and beat Georgia. You can't line up and out-trick Georgia normally, and it's because of that right there, because Glenn Schumann's ability to fit these things up properly. Hey, you got to smoke some darts on Saturday. Big Tobacco going to love this segment right here. You got to smoke some darts on Saturday, all right? Whenever Jackson Dart, who runs like a tight end, by the way, 6'3", 225 pounds, what he's listed at, I'd say about 235, all right, runs like a tight end. You better hit him like a tight end. You better address him thusly. All right, he is going to be somebody who runs with some aggressiveness. And again, you got to smoke some darts on Saturday. When you get him out in grass, you got to pummel him. You got to make him pay for out there running around. And when you rush him as a pass rusher, rush him with integrity. We've talked about that all week. You can't give him lanes. You got to mush rush. You got to push that pocket. You cannot rush him on different levels, and make them walk it defense. You got to make this football team walk it. I don't believe Lane Kiffin wants to be 3 yards in a cloud of dust. In fact, I think that makes him want to pull his hair out. I think that's the last thing he wants to be. I think he wants to be explosive. I think he wants to be fun. I think he wants to be razzle-dazzle. He does not want to eat his vegetables. Make him do it on Saturday. Now, let's talk about the obvious, elephant in the room. Trey Harris, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with Trey Harris? I don't know. I don't think he's going to kill you. I don't, because I don't think you allow things like this to happen. Eventually, you'll take him away with some type of safety help or giving him some type of help or something. But I also don't think he's going to kill you from their offensive standpoint. This isn't a 12, 15 reception guy. This isn't a large target share football player. This is all boom, okay? When he gets the ball, it's going to be explosive unless you play a bunch of man coverage against him like Texas A&M did last week, and he's going to run some slants and some underwork stuff and then get on the top of you with some, 50-50 balls, things like that. But this is not what Luther Burden was to Missouri in the sense that we want to try to get 12 touches to this football player every single Saturday. No. This is the guy that they use to take the top off the defense. Do not let him do that, and you'll be fine. I know that sounds really, really hard. It's much harder in execution than it is in concept, but it's okay. All right, it'll be all right. Here's what I think, and these kind of takes really, I get nervous about doing them, but I watch enough tape, I feel comfortable about saying this. Trey Harris is a good football player. He is a really good football player, but the system is really, really good as well. All right, there's a reason that I don't think Trey Harris's name gets brought up in the conversation of Malik Neighbors or the Wilson kid or the Keon Coleman kid down from Florida State or Marvin Harrison Jr. or Luther Burden or any of these guys or Roma Dunze or Jaden Polk, all these elite top-end first-round discussion wide receivers. Trey Harris's name is not yet mentioned in that discussion because, again, I think a lot of people see what I see where it's like, all right, he's running go balls. He ran a corner every once in a while against Auburn. He runs some slants. Let's take that away. Let's not let them be explosive on us today. Let's try. But let's not design a game plan solely around Trey Harris, all right? I think you can out-athlete this offensive line tremendously. tremendously. I think Georgia's defensive line is filled with a bunch of athletes that might make this offensive line from Ole Miss, it might make their head spin just a little bit, okay? Because they really haven't seen anything like this, except for Alabama. The closest thing outside of that, believe it or not, guys, Tech's got a bunch of freaks. Tech's got a bunch of guys on that front four that are absolute athletes, and they gave Ole Miss some problems for 4 quarters with regards to getting pressure on the quarterback. I think you see Glenn Schumann design some run stunts, some pass game stunts, some things that put this offensive line in horizontal stress, making them go left to right. That is a problem for this unit. So yeah, if you're getting into the greedy discussion, all right, I want to see number 3 travel only on critical downs. I want to see Kamari Lassiter versus Trey Harris on critical downs. 3rd and 17, if they think they can bail themselves out with a back shoulder ball, no, they cannot, because Kamari Lassiter is on Trey Harris. If it's 3rd and 14 and they think they can do something funky and get a double move on Trey Harris on Dalen Everett, let's not allow that. Let's take that out of the game plan, ideally, if they allow us to. I know they're a football team that plays with a bunch of pace, but if I'm a defensive coordinator, I want to put my best guy on their best guy on these critical downs that normally are giveaway possessions, right? Giveaway plays for the offense. This offense doesn't play like this. This offense threatens and presses and stresses for 4 quarters and for 4 downs. So you have to be able, again, in critical downs, to be able to take Trey Harris away because they're going to lean on him. Number 2, I want sacks, lots of them. I'm thinking like 4 or 5. Like 4 or 5. I think Jackson Dart, when mush rushed, when the pocket is pushed on him, he will sack himself. He will run into bodies. All right, so be diligent and be disciplined in your rush, and I think you can get this guy on the ground. And then the last one, if I'm being greedy, this one's all about you guys. This one's all about you guys listening. I want to see a bunch of false starts. I want to see a bunch of false starts on Saturday. Not only because it will lead to success for this defense, but I want to see it because I want to be right. I want to be right about this offense being way too complex to travel into a harsh situation. Welcome into tonight's show.